I think we need to start off first by just giving a bit of a premise to what this conversation is. So, sex has driven a lot of innovations in technology, the internet. People don't talk about it, but it's true. We are all a product of sex, like, like fundamentally. Do you know what I mean? We are all here because of it. So let's take the taboo out of that conversation first of all, and actually let's talk about it. But the first thing I think we should do is probably introduce Lex and Glenis and tell folks what you do, because folks won't be familiar. So Lex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So hey, I'm Lex. I'm originally from the States, but now I live in Berlin, and I run a company called Modality Group. So what we do is sex tech intelligence. So that's doing market research for sex toy companies. And a lot of people say, wait, you can do that? I'm like, yeah, you can. And so it's like you're never bored. You're always looking at things that you probably shouldn't be looking for at work. So it makes like co-working really, really fucking awkward. But it actually keeps me engaged all the time. So I love my job.
Amazing. And Glennie?
Yes, so my name is Glenise Kennard Moore, and I am the founder of Skimoo Tech and the creator of the VDOM. And the VDOM is an app-connected prosthetic genital device that can go from flaccid to erect at the push of a button on your smartphone or smartwatch. So basically, we call it a smart penis, and it is the best traditional, beyond the traditional strap-on out there on the market right now.
So, Glennie, let's start off. Like, why did you come up with this? Why do we need a smart penis? Coming like as a man, I'm very aware of my positioning this. So I just want, yeah, like let me ask, like, why?
There's actually multiple reasons, but the first one was that why is there only one option when it comes to dildos, strap-ons? Why is it the only option? That was the first part of it. But then two, it was like there were so many people that could benefit from being able to utilize a product like ours that was creating an on-demand erection. Why have to have only one choice, or why only be susceptible to only being able to utilize medication or Maggie made it.
No, it's fine.
Keep going. But yes, but why only have the option of surgery or medication? We wanted to give people more options, or a novelty a novelty product. My transgender friends, you know, the gruesome surgery that they have to go through for gender reaffirming surgery was absolutely mind-blowing to me. I had a friend who was maybe a smaller person, and they were like eating a lot and drinking a lot of stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing? And they were like, I'm trying to gain weight. I'm like, okay, why? They're like, well, I'm trying to have gender reaffirming surgery next year, and for me to be able to do that, I have to gain weight so that they could take the right amount of skin for my forearm. That blew my mind. I'm like, that's crazy. There should be something out here other than just traditional strap-ons as an option for someone to feel whole as a person, or for somebody who just wants to get it on spontaneously. So that was the reason why I made it.
No, but that makes perfect sense, right? Like, we never really talk about the different use cases that we have for these kind of implements. And like, when we're doing our research, we're seeing people say, okay, we've checked this box, lesbians, cool, they got everything they need, but not understanding that there are a lot more varieties of people who need to use these products. So I think what you're doing is just amazing.
Appreciate that. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Brilliant. So we've got a guest here, and I don't want to leave her out. So Maggie, can you tell us who you are and what you do, just for the audience?
Yeah, hi, sorry for being a little bit late. I'm Maggie Stiglman. I work at Lioness. We make smart vibrators that will give you access to your pleasure data. So you can learn more about your body and what's going on. You can learn about your orgasms. You can learn about everything else that happens. Sorry.
Whoa, what do you do? What's your
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I am the head of app development, software development. So I mostly work on the app. I've done some on the, there's code scattered around everywhere, but I mostly do stuff with the app. So yeah, it can.
Brilliant. So thank you for saying that. So I suppose I want to kind of run in, because obviously there's a lot of sometimes stigma or taboo about some of the stuff that was just mentioned and some of the topics. I suppose I'll shoot this one to Lex. Like, when you're going and thinking about doing like sex research, tell us about how challenging that is. For those folks who didn't know, I did a session with Maggie's colleague Anna, who leads Lioness as well. So do watch on the virtual day if you haven't seen some of that content, because we cover some of that. But Lex, it would be really interesting just to understand a little bit about the research process, what you're looking for, and why, and actually from a diversity perspective, how challenging it is to get good information.
Great question. So we started the company because when I was earlier in my career, I was in Hong Kong at a trade show, and there are sex toys everywhere. You know, we saw dolls, we saw whips and things, and all the, you know, it was like Alice in Wonderland. And I sat down at a VR pornography station, and the guy was trying to sell me like this is the dream, and it's a man POV showing what he's doing and you know what he likes. And I'm like, okay, how did you get to that reality? He goes, doesn't matter. It's the future. It's the future of sexuality. And I was like, huh. Okay, this must be this is a one-off. So then I was talking to a company in Japan, and I said, well, how do you test your products? He said, well, we try them all in the bathroom, and then we come up with new ideas. And so as you can see, that this is not a data-driven approach. We design products for people's genitals, what we think that they have, and then hope that it's scalable across the board. And so when we think about doing our research, we're trying to think about inclusion for more types of bodies, more types of lived experiences, but also more types of just like religions, for example. So how do you design a sex toy for someone who is more conservative? How do you design a sex toy for someone who has disabilities? And so when we go out and do our research, we're trying to address these questions about actual pain points for people in real life. So the biggest challenge we have is actually trying to get straight people data. I don't know. We haven't quite figured out why.
And why is that? Because when I was talking to Anna, for example, she was saying that there's a lot of sex research on men and erectile dysfunction, for example, because that's been an issue for ages. So, like, when you say straight data, I suppose, what is that data? All
right, that's actually a good distinction. Men always have data. Penises always have data, because penises run the world, air quotes. Right? So it's like there's always going to be a plethora of data on things that impact people with penises. But when you're thinking about more niche products, so like I'll give you an example. So Glenyce was actually one of my first clients. And she came to me and she says, I need to understand what is the lived experience of trans, non-binary, and lesbian people. And I'm like, okay, where do I start? Actually, the process was actually quite easy because they're under-respected, right? So when someone comes to you and say, hey, well, I'm trying to understand your experience. They're like, oh, no one's ever tried to do that for me before. So we were able to really answer their questions, make them feel heard, make them feel listened to. But when it came to people who have kind of a privilege of having, whatever they want, it becomes a little bit more challenging because there's no urgency, right? But that said, like, sex data is challenging. Key challenges, people lie. So they'll tell you they're having either more sex or less sex, depending on their agenda. They'll tell you they never masturbated in their lives. They tell you they always use a condom every time. These are all stories, right? And so my challenge is like, how do I get reliable data and see through all of the unsaids?
So to Maggie, like, engineering this must be a real challenge because you're trying to give people real quality insights into, I suppose, both how they use your product and potentially how they compare to other people. But like, how do you go about that as someone who's building a technology where it's really hard to get accurate user feedback, where you need to keep users' data anonymous, where you want to use the insights, but like, how do you as a CTO think about that?
I mean, it's something we think a lot about. Just going off of what Lex was saying, it's really hard to get this data. When we were making the product, there was not much research for us to go on. Sorry, everyone. Sweating a little bit up here. No, I'm okay. But yeah, it's definitely difficult. In terms of your question about data privacy, it's a huge deal for us. In terms of a tech product that is so data focused, we try to do our best. A lot of companies that we are in the industry with don't perhaps take it as seriously. They aren't necessarily data forward companies. They're sort of attaching data onto the devices that they already have. And when you have data streaming from a vibrator to an app to a server, you're using Bluetooth, you're using Wi-Fi. All of these different elements are different attack points. So really, we have to understand that if a hacker is motivated, they're going to attack one of those different points. And so we've done our best to make whatever someone can get out of those different little points gibberish. So the only person who can actually put it all together and make sense of it is us. And then in terms of keeping the data private from us, it is encrypted. Like if a user writes into us and is asking, which happens a lot, like, can you look at this session for us? We're like, can you send us a screenshot? Because no. And then in terms of, knowing what the users want, there's a lot of difficulties in it. There wasn't much research going in, so we had to do a lot of surveys and which isn't the most ideal thing for this kind of thing, because people are going to give you, answers that might be as honest as they can be. But
what are some of the interesting things that you learned? Like, having had the data, I suppose, people say, well, data doesn't lie. Like, what have you learned about, orgasms? What have you learned about the use of your product? What have you learned about people's, sexual preferences or activities? Like, is there any interesting things that you can say that you've seen in the product that you're like, oh, we didn't expect that, or that wasn't what we thought?
Yeah, definitely. When we first started, we had a fairly small testing base, just as it goes. Like we were testing on as many people as we could, but what we discovered is that most people have a pattern to their orgasm, and what we thought at the beginning was that usually people display a very similar pattern every time. So every orgasm will look pretty similar. Like, of course, there's a lot of variations, but in the data, you're seeing pressure data is our main indicator for arousal and orgasm. So it's the vibrator, it's inserted, and then it will take the data on your pelvic floor contractions. And it's easy, once you start to see your pattern, it's really easy to spot the orgasm in the data. And so we thought for a while that, everyone has a fingerprint. Everyone has an orgasm pattern. And then as more and more people started using it and the base got bigger, we found people could have a couple different patterns. It wasn't just one, it was going in between. And we weren't shocked, because we knew we hadn't made any definitive claims. It was we were still learning so much. But yeah, I mean, that was something that we thought we had stumbled upon early on, that, everyone just has one. But no, some people will experience 2 or 3 different kinds of orgasms. And that's an arbitrary number I'm picking. This is just from the anecdotes we've gotten from users.
And is that the same for both, I suppose, men, women? Does it vary between
We actually don't have as much data. So the vibrator has been designed for vaginas, but we don't take gender data from our users. That's another thing that we've tried to be careful about. We don't take any data that we don't need. So we don't know users' ages, we don't know their locations.
You think it would be helpful to know that? I mean, going back to some of the research thing,
Definitely. For when we do partner with some of our research communities, which we do in the app, you can sign up for different research studies that we have going on. Then you have an onboarding process, and you'll enter your age and different things that the researchers need to know. But in terms of our big user base, we don't have gender information, we don't have sex information. And we are careful not to make assumptions about that sort of thing. But to your question, men tend to can have different orgasms as well. I don't know personally, because most of the things I am hearing back from are about people with vaginas. I don't know if people with penises have the same sort of variation. But I do know that the pressure data works similarly. The vibrator can be used anally, and you get very, very similar looking data.
Got it. So, Glenise, lots of people would say, the assertion, this is a man's world. And, launching a tech business as a woman, we know is hard. Like, we've got some of the data on the steps just coming up here. Like, the proportion of funding that goes into businesses built for women or for men is massively varying. How do you find it running a business which is, I suppose, a taboo subject for many men, and being a woman, building a product for, I suppose, mainly women, I would argue, as well?
Well, that's the really cool thing about what we're doing. Our product was initially geared towards the LGBT community, 100%. As a person who identifies as a lesbian woman, I knew my community first, right? But when we started to get into the research and development, we just started getting all of these floods of emails from every community. So at this point, even though we still, push our product towards the LGBT community, there is no way that I can really truly say that our user has an identity. It's whoever actually needs the product. So because of that, we don't really end up falling into a lot of the, well, it's a woman making a penis type thing like that. Everybody's just focused on the solution that this thing is actually, the problem that this is actually solving. So because of that, we sort of get, we get a pass when it comes to that sort of type of thing. Now, what we don't get a pass on, and there's two things. One is, why the work that they're doing is so important is because there is no data. So, of course, you can imagine I started my company in pure startup mode. And what happens when you're starting in startup mode? Everybody, you're trying to get investors, you're trying to get interest. Where's the data? Where's the data? Where's the data? Well, if there is no data that exists, what do you tell these people? But you're getting millions of emails every day from all these people all over the world saying thank you for creating this product or even thinking about it. So one thing is, that's why their work is so important, why data is so important. But as far as, running into, certain types of walls because of who we're presenting this to and being a woman that's doing it, I don't know if anybody really cares. They just want the product. They want the solution. They want the solution more than they care about who it's coming from or who's doing it.
I mean, I think that's true from a consumer standpoint, but from an investor standpoint, a lot of the VCs have vice clauses, so they can't legally invest in sex businesses, which is a huge.
Why is that?
It's just built in. No,
get back to that taboo side.
Yes, exactly. No sex, drugs, rock and roll. And it's like, I know in the U.S. at least, there's this background in the laws that makes it really illegal. Yep. But also they're too afraid to commit out loud that they're interested in these things. Again, with the taboo, and the data also doesn't. Not understanding. They have no benchmark. Right?
They don't have the product market size, probably. They don't
have the market size. Yeah. They don't have the
Barely.
intuition. They don't have the understanding of what's possible, and they don't have the actual dreamscape, right?
But how big do we think this I suppose, I'll call them, I suppose, the devices industry part, because, the sex industry is huge. There's pornographic content, for example. We're not really talking about that. But how big is this part of the market? Help us understand from your research, let's look underneath, Maggie, how big do you think it is?
I would bring up this one report that Lex is going to be like, don't even say it right now. When we first started working together, I was like, well, I found this on the internet. And they said it's an official report, and they said it's this big of a market. And, at the time, I'm looking specifically at dildos at the time because it's I had to compare my product to something, even though I don't allow anybody to call my product a sex toy. And it was it's 14 billion. And Lex was like, let me tell you something. Let me tell you everything that's wrong with this research report. And I was like, is she just trying to sell this to me, or is she? And then she broke it down. So to be honest, we're still building that data. There are theories out there. Forbes said that, we as VDOM was entering into a $37 billion sex tech industry last year. And then 2 months ago, I heard that it had moved up to $52 billion in 2024. So I'm going to let the expert tell you what's wrong with that.
I mean, it's all conjecture, right? Most of the sex toy companies are privately held, right? So you don't have access to this publicly available sex, sales data. Right? Except for actually the UK, you can find it, a lot of it, because the way you do your laws is a little bit different, which is really quite convenient. But people are guessing based on bottom-up strategy. So they're like, oh, okay, let me see. we got about this many women and this many men, and then we say 5% may, and that's actually a valid way to do it. But when you don't have any other statistics that you can pull on to make the model work, it's bullshit. Like you're making things up. It's a bit like magic. And so that's kind of what we're trying to solve for. Is like, can we get more information about people's like preferences, their using, their usership, buying habits, etc. But what about people who don't use it yet? Where's the potential? Because I would guess and argue that the numbers wouldn't tell you anything anyway, because there's so many people who haven't even started to use the products yet. They don't even know what they don't know. They're too scared. The barrier to entry is too high, right? Because if you spend $200 on a toy and it doesn't work for you, you think your body's broken. You don't think the toy's broken. It's not like buying a computer. So it's just a different landscape altogether.
Yeah. I mean, quick show of hands. Who thinks this industry is bigger than that 37 billion that Forbes said? Yeah. Doesn't surprise us, does it? So Glenise, you were in Cambridge. What were you doing there? I know there's an interesting story, and it comes down to like R&D.
Actually, that is still a top secret. We're working out.
Okay.
I cannot say that one just yet, but I tell you that I will say this. One of the things that I'm super excited about is, I didn't wake up one day and was just like, you know what, I'm going to go out here, Mom, and I'm going to make the best penises in the world, right? That was not my idea at all. I wanted to go out and I wanted to I saw that there was a problem. I wanted a solution, right? But I am a super techie. My background is in information security. I call myself a tech nerd. Might not be. I don't know how to code. But what I do love is all the possibilities that technology can bring us. So one of the things that I wanted to do with my product is see how we can leverage the ever-growing world of technology to make this better and better and better in terms of making it as humanistic as possible. So because of that, we're working with different types of with different types of technology like body sensors. We're getting into some brain-computer interfaces and stuff like that for people who are completely paraplegic and have physical disabilities. We don't want anybody to be missed. Our motto is like, let's democratize sex. So because of that, I'm working with a couple of different organizations and schools and research departments so that we can, leverage technology and make some things a little bit better.
I love it. So Maggie, what can people expect? I briefly spoke about this, but quick show of hands, how many people have watched the virtual session that I did with Anna? So some of you might have heard this as well, but it would be interesting to hear it from Maggie's perspective. Where is the future of your app and technology going? We've heard a bit about the metaverse, for example. We were talking about it in the office. Is the evolution that you're going to have a VR headset and that's going to be integrated with the app and your devices? Who thinks that's crazy in the next 20 years? Put your hand up if you think I'm crazy. So most people can see it going in that direction. Is that where it's going, Maggie? Tell us.
I mean, I can speak about where our app is going.
Yeah.
We do. I mean, I think VR is, not a big leap. For example, right now, for the last few months, we've been working on adding a new feature that has been requested a lot, which is basically just inviting a partner from far away to join and be able to see the data and control the vibrator. Being able to control a vibrator from long distance has existed for a little while, for sure. But this one would allow you to share your experience. They'd be able to see the data, and it's because our data makes it a lot different. So with that in mind and us and how much I've been working on that, just head down, I can see, adding a VR headset into that. It lends itself well to a watch app, which is probably on the horizon. Things that easily connecting different technology into this stuff that we've already built, that's usually something that is very private and not connected to the tech world, meaning, sex or a masturbation session. The fact that we're already able to connect into it a little bit with using the vibrator or the app live, a VR headset, that's not a big leap, and I think that makes sense for sure. Have we talked about that? No,
So
but
not Lioness
there's just
yet.
a few steps to get there. I doubt we
Steps,
would.
but not many big hurdles, is what I suppose.
No, not many big hurdles, not at all. So in terms of the industry, if we're not there yet, we'll be there very soon.
Got it. Sex in the metaverse, people. You've heard it here. It's coming. Pun very intended. So, there we go. We've only got like literally a minute for any questions. So I didn't want this just to be the Ashley show. Very conscious that there might be questions in the audience. We've got a hand up there. So let's go straight to the person there.
Hello? Okay. I just had a quick question. I think it's really cool, all the stuff that you guys are doing and like working across so many different kinds of communities, and some of these communities intersect. And I was interested in hearing like exactly how you're reaching out to these communities, and just like the kind of work that you're doing to engage with them, because it's like you're building something for a group of people. Like, how are you actually reaching them?
Yeah. Well, I'll let all of you go, and then we'll call it. So, Glynis, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. One of the things that you all were talking about earlier was like, how do you get this data from your user, right? The thing that has definitely worked for me, one, communicating about the product is the product, and it pretty much communicates for itself, right? Well, once we actually have those users coming to us and telling us a little bit more, I make it a very huge point to get a little bit more on the ground with my user. I like to talk to people directly. I could probably tell you the names of every 150 people that pre-ordered my product, because I've talked to them directly. I email them. I call them on the phone sometimes if they're open to it. I think that the way we're going to really streamline this data that we need in this industry and where we're going in the future is really going to be those intimate conversations and really getting to know the person who's using it, because it's very diverse. It's so many different varieties, and there's so many different use cases.
Cool. So my key stakeholders are actually the founders. And so one of the cool things that's happening in our space is that a lot of women and trans and different kinds of people are starting to start businesses. And so because of my unique skill set, I try to help them. So doing talks for early stage founders at how you do your own research, because you can't afford me. So you need to go ahead and go out into the world and have a starter kit. Thinking about, this one just told me I need to do more like Black and Web3 stuff, because in my day job I work at a Web3 company. So it's like, can I explain blockchain to these people so they can apply it to their companies? So I'm really focused on the small business owner and the founder, and trying to see how can I create more opportunities for them to learn, but also to further their sex businesses.
And I really agree with what Glynis said. Once, to keep the app working and the experience working well, we need to be able to talk to our users really pretty much one-on-one. Every time we have been able to make a big leap in progress, it's been, okay, we need to run a big, big is bad, but we need to run a bit of a user study. Like, give me 5 people maybe. Let's set up a week of interviews. We'll be doing Skypes with them, and just really getting down and hearing what each of these different users has to say. Last time we did this, I think we only interviewed maybe 6 or 7 users, and it was still mind-blowing how different each person was, and I felt like we had somehow hit like the 4 or 5 main archetypes of our users in there, and it was such a small case. So yeah, people are just so different and are going to use your product in such unique ways, even though you're it's the same product in everyone's hands. So yeah, it's difficult to. We can't communicate with them in the same way that a lot of companies do. When you look at user research, it's a lot of like, oh, just like watch, the best way to do it is to watch your user use your product. We obviously are not going to do that. So it's difficult, but yeah, I completely agree with Glynis. It's about those intimate conversations. That's how you really learn what your users need, especially in our case.
Got it. And if anybody is interested, do watch the session that I had with Anna, where we go in and talk a little bit more about, how product research, some of the barriers to online advertising, for example, for for this product. So with that, unfortunately, we're going to have to call it time. As Glenn said, there will be a demo literally back there. So if you're interested to actually see, you know, Billy stay around, please have a look. I want to do a quick show of hands quickly. Who has heard a conference topic like this at a conference before? No, you should be talking. You got this all the time. And do you think this was a worthwhile thing to have on the agenda? Thank you. We try. We want to make sure that we're talking about the innovative things that are going on. So, yeah, you heard it here. Please do see it over there. And I just want to say a massive thank you to the panelists today as well. So thank you, Gillian, thank you, Lex, thank you, Maggie, as well. Cheers.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.